Welcome to Illinois in Session. I'm Mary Piacenti, right here in Urbana. 7 months. That's all that stands between Illinois and the biggest political rematch the state has seen in decades. Incumbent Democrat JB Pritzker is chasing history, a third term. No Illinois governor this century has done it. Standing in his way, again, Republican Darren Bailey. The former state senator lost to Pritzker by 15 points 4 years ago. But this is not 2022. This is a new political landscape, new battles with Washington, and a historical debt crisis facing the state. And for the first time, Governor JB Pritzker sat down with Illinois in Session to make his case for a third term.
It's a long time to serve in an executive position for the state, but I have to say we've made so much progress in Illinois, and I want to continue that progress. I think you may know that when I took office back in 2019, the state had suffered 8 credit downgrades under my Republican predecessor, really 21 credit downgrades over the previous 25 years. And my predecessor left me with $17 billion of unpaid bills. And they were about 250 days overdue. And we also had really experienced unbalanced budgets for many, many years. So those are just some of the fiscal challenges. And then, of course, he had torn apart state government. It really had been hollowed out. We were not serving the public well in Illinois. So these are all challenges that I took on, and we've made tremendous progress. We've gotten 10 credit upgrades since I took office. We paid off all those old bills. We balanced the budget 7 times in a row, and I just introduced my 8th balanced budget. And those are all just fiscal items that we're talking about. But I think people's lives have been made better, and we're going to continue that by protecting their rights. We've made Illinois a refuge for reproductive rights, such that people here feel safe when exercising that fundamental right, but also people from around the country feel like they can come to Illinois to exercise that right. Not to mention, of course, we've been attacked by the federal government and ICE and CBP, and I have worked very hard to protect the people of Illinois. They have worked very hard to protect themselves from unlawful detentions that have occurred of U.S. citizens and of legal residents, not to mention undocumented people. So we have a lot more work to do to make sure we're lowering costs for people in Illinois. We're building more electricity capacity in order to lower electric bills. We're raising wages in the state by standing up for workers' rights. And of course, I've raised the minimum wage to $15. But again, much more to do. And I look forward to having a further conversation with you today about what those things are.
Took the words right out of my mouth. I was going to ask, what do you feel like you have left to accomplish? And what do you feel like is the biggest issue facing the state right now?
Well, there's so much more to do. Let me start with everything is too damned expensive, and excuse my language, but it's just true. People can't afford to pay their rent. They can't afford their electric bills, their homeowners insurance, their auto insurance bills, and not just in Illinois, but across the country. Of course, Donald Trump has made it more expensive. He's charged about $1,700 more every year to families because of his tariffs. And anything we can do to make life more livable, we're going to do. One of the big things that I care deeply about is bringing down property taxes in the state. In order to do that, we've got to fund our schools better, because that's the biggest piece of people's local property taxes is that school tax that they've got on their property tax bill. So if we continue to do as I have done, increase by billions of dollars the amount that the state is contributing to K-12 education, we're going to accomplish the goal of helping to bring down the pressure of rising property taxes. And then finally, as you know, we've been investing significantly in higher education. University of Illinois, the Illinois State University, Southern Illinois University, and all 12 of our major public universities, as well as our community colleges, are doing better today than they were when I took office. They're ranked better. Our students are doing better. We have more kids getting an education at a lower cost than when I took office. So very proud of that work, but we've got to continue on that path.
The path toward the governorship has been anything but easy for Darren Bailey. He came up as a state senator. Then in 2022, he went straight for the top, challenging Governor Pritzker. He lost by nearly 15 points. He tried again in 2024, this time for Congress, looking to unseat U.S. Representative Mike Bost in the 12th District. He lost in the primary. But Bailey keeps coming back, and this time he knows exactly why he lost. Cook County alone buried him in 2022, down over 50 points or 650,000 votes. But the issue wasn't just the numbers, it was the words. Bailey once called Chicago a, quote, hellhole, comparing it to the purge. Those words followed him. In this year's primary, he lost Cook, DuPage, and Lake counties to Ted Dabrowski, each by double digits. Now, Bailey is apologizing for his comments, saying, quote, I've said things about Chicago I wish I could take back, but this city's showed me grace anyway, and I'm a better man for it. The city isn't the only relationship he's renegotiating. Bailey is now distancing himself from President Trump, who endorsed him in 2022. Bailey told the Chicago Tribune, quote, I am my own person, and that there will be no, quote, outside influence dictating anything we do here in Illinois. A new Bailey, a new strategy. We sat down with him to find out how he plans to come out on top. Take a listen.
So I think that's why I ran in 2022 was for that exact reason. Republicans just haven't performed, and what I witnessed in the 4 years that I served in Springfield, people show up, they get elected to office, and on both sides of the coin, sometimes it becomes more about re-election than remembering what people ran for. So you're right. The Republican Party has a problem, and I come with a lot of grassroots support. The 4 years that I served in Springfield, serving in the super minority, and just being a farmer from Southern Illinois, I was able to get noticed. I was able to get the people's voice out. At least they were heard. And so running for governor, we had a terribly low turnout. There's a lot of this younger generation. There's a lot of apathy that my vote doesn't count. It's rigged, whatever it is. And they seem sometimes that's their form of retaliation, is just not to vote. So my goal is to, restore integrity to the voting process, restore integrity to this thing called government, so that people do believe that their voice is heard. And the landscape today is a lot different than it was 4 years ago. A lot of people across the state, and especially up in your area, are feeling the pinch with just continued increased property taxes, utility rates, the gas prices, or the gas tax at least, and just on and on. So that's why we decided just now, 7 months ago, to get back into this race, because I feel that I've got the wherewithal to stand on what needs to be done. I've got the connections to be able to work with my friends on the other side of the aisle and make life more affordable, make life safer, and improve our education process here in Illinois.
And sticking with 4 years ago, I kind of want to take a look back at one comment you made. You called Chicago a hellhole at one point 4 years ago. And in 2026 primary, your opponent, Ted Dabrowski, beat you in Cook County. How do you expect to convince moderates and independents in Chicago to trust you in this general election?
So therein lies the messaging. I think I've been trying to do that. And as I stare into this camera, Chicagoland, that was some bad advice that I got. And, I was in a debate. There's always political strategy involved. And at the time, what I thought made sense, at least just with the crime and such, I said something that didn't resonate very well. And the reason it didn't resonate is because I found out how much Chicagoans love the city. And I did not say that out of hate. I said it out of love, as I would, as you would discipline a child and kind of, expose what I thought to be the obvious. So I found out the hard way that that wasn't very smart. I've said things, we've all said things in our lives, and that we regret, wish we could take back. That is certainly one of them. I retract those words. I apologize for that. As per the recent primary, we were up there. I was up there for the first series of the 6+ forums and debates. But then afterwards, there seemed to be this kind of this I don't know, strategy against me that the other candidates would suggest that, well, gosh, Bailey's not up here in Chicago. He doesn't care about you. He's refusing to show up at debates and forums. And that certainly wasn't true. There were some inner workings of creating some of these debates and forums. And we weren't privy to the setup. We weren't privy to the initial date setting. My calendar was already full. And let's face it, if we're going to correct and fix and work, on government in Illinois, you have to know how it works. And one of the mechanisms in a primary, especially for a Republican primary, is the knowledge that it's downstate that wins the primary. So that's where we were focusing and shoring up our support to ensure a victory through the primary. And I feel quite confident, especially with the meetings that we've had and the places that we've been in the last month now since the primary. Chicago is ready. Chicago is ready. Cook County is ready. The suburbs are ready. I'm ready. And maybe in and of itself, that's something different than 4 years ago as well.
Our sincere thanks to both JB Pritzker and Darren Bailey for their time. And if you'd like to see the full interviews from both of these candidates, make sure to check them out at UI7Newsroom.com. Turning now to the U.S. Senate primary. 15 candidates and 1 seat. Dick Durbin's. U.S. Congressman Raja Krishnamurthy looked untouchable for most of the year, leading the field by double digits. Then, in the final weeks, Lieutenant Governor Juliana Stratton closed the gap. The two traded leads all the way to Election Day. Here with the numbers, UI7 Newsroom's chief politics correspondent Nathan Gonzalez.
Thanks, Mary. And yeah, I want to look back to a few months out before Election Day. It was looking to be a slam dunk for U.S. Representative Raja Krishnamurthy. Here's a poll from Public Policy Polling back in September, so about 6 months before Election Day. He held the lead at double digits over Lieutenant Governor Juliana Stratton. And then here at 8% is Robin Kelly, or U.S. Representative Robin Kelly. Now, if you look behind the numbers, it makes sense. Krishnamurthy led the fundraising race by pretty much over everyone. By the end of his campaign, he raised almost $30 million. At one point, he raised 3 times the total amount of the candidates from both sides combined. So Krishnamurthy had way more money to spend on ads and his campaign early on. Now, let's move forward to about a week before Election Day. The race is essentially tied between Stratton and Krishnamurthy. Stratton, 32%, Krishnamurthy, 30%. That's within the margin of error. So depending on which poll you looked at, either one of them could have had the top spot. Now, finally, here are the results. Stratton wins with 40%, Raja Krishnamurthy at 33%, and then Robin Kelly at 18%. Now, how did she do it? Because up until this point, she was the underdog with most of the polls and then switching between leading up to Election Day. So these 3 counties pretty much tell the whole story. That Chicago area, that small part of the state, but it was huge when it comes to population density. Look at this circle right here compared to all of the other counties within the state. Now, Cook County, 700,000 votes. Compare that to DuPage and Lake County, that's a 600,000 vote gap between the two. These are our top 2 counties right here. So whoever wins Cook County had a pretty good lead within the entire race, and that's exactly what Stratton did. Stratton wins it with 287,000 votes. Krishnamurthy polls at 199,000. And then we have U.S. Representative Robin Kelly at 164,000. So that margin right there practically decided the race. Let's look at DuPage County. Krishnamurthy wins it, but only with about 5,000 to 4,000 votes. And then same story in Lake County. Krishnamurthy takes it, but only by a thread. That's almost like less than 1,000 votes, but not enough to overcome what happened in Cook County. Now, I know we're focusing a lot on the Democratic race, but Illinois is rated a solid blue state. Let's go right here by Cook Political Report, meaning whoever won the Democratic primary is likely to take the seat come November. Now, on the Republican side, Don Tracy pretty much wins this race pretty handedly. practically all red. We have some green down here, but this is pretty much all red. Don Tracy is the former GOP chair of the Illinois Republican Party, so he wins pretty handily with about 40% over Janine Evans. So here we are, Stratton versus Don Tracy. November is 7 months away, and this race, Mary, it's just getting started.
UI7 Newsroom's chief politics correspondent Nathan Gonzalez with that Senate breakdown. Nathan, thank you. When we come back, $150 billion, Illinois' pension debt. We sat down with both candidates for comptroller with their plans on how to fix it. Then, two New York Times best-selling authors. They covered the 2024 election, and now they have something to say about this Illinois politician's shot at the White House. You won't want to miss it.
From harnessing the transformative power of computing and data sciences, to discovering new ways for environmental and agricultural sustainability, to opening new pathways for better patient care and medical discovery using AI. At Illinois, we develop and deliver ideas that positively impact the world.
Welcome back to Illinois in Session. $150 billion. That is how much Illinois owes in unfunded pension liabilities. And it's not getting any easier. Governor Pritzker warned in his State of the State address earlier this year that the federal budget cuts and the end of COVID-era funding means a tighter state budget. And when the money runs out and there isn't enough to go around, it's the state comptroller who decide what gets paid and what doesn't. Susana Mendoza has held that seat for a decade, but she's not running again. 4 women competed to replace her. State Representative Margaret Croak won the Democratic primary, backed by Governor Pritzker, Attorney General Kwame Raoul, and the state's House Speaker. Now she has to answer the hard question: how do you actually fix it? We sat down with Croak to find out.
Right now, I think it's going to be an issue of our revenue streams from the federal government. It's actually not something within the office. It's something that is happening to the office. But making sure, too, that because of that we're utilizing our state funds to their maximum capacity, that we're not wasting any dollars, that we are getting all of our local government audits back, that we are good stewards of taxpayer dollars, just in a time of potentially, revenue strain. That is something that I'm concerned about. It's something that's keeping me up at night.
Well, speaking of that strain, actually, that's my next question. The state's facing a tighter budget. What are your non-negotiable payment priorities, and which services should expect delays?
So the first one is payroll. We can't mess with people's livelihoods or their paycheck. But I'm hoping that we won't experience too many delays within the office. One of the programs that I'm hoping to kind of champion is the vendor payment program, so that if we are in a situation where the federal government starts to keep a lot of our dollars from the state, which we are seeing them do, we can work with financial institutions to pay some of our vendors and then get reimbursed later on. So it's a program that allows us to shift the burden, so at least our nonprofits and our smaller vendors get paid and don't have to rely solely on the state and our liquidity. I've seen what happened when we had our entire social service structure network break down under the Rauner administration. I will do everything under my power to not allow that to happen again.
I want to dive into your platform a little bit more. In a recent interview with Capital News Service, you said you were confident in your ability to steer the ship in the right direction. What does that right direction look like more specifically?
Transparency, efficiency, knowing that we are using taxpayer dollars in a responsible way, that we are restoring trust. Even though I think Susana Mendoza has done an incredible job as comptroller, unfortunately, I think for many people in the state of Illinois, there's still that lack of trust with state government and how we utilize taxpayer dollars. So I want to make sure that you have insight on how that money is spent, that from the moment the General Assembly passes a budget and the governor signs that budget, that you can follow an appropriation and see where those dollars are going. So that's one of the programs that I'd like to implement within my first term, is a modernization system where you can actually see, scroll, very user-friendly. But that is one of those ways of making sure that, taxpayers know we're using these dollars as responsibly as if they were our own.
On the Republican side is Brian Drew, a small business owner and attorney from Southern Illinois. He ran unopposed for the nomination, but the real fight is still ahead. Illinois hasn't elected a Republican comptroller in over a decade. And Drew's argument is simple. The comptroller's office needs to be an independent watchdog, not an extension of the governor. We sat down with Drew to hear his plans for the debt and to put that independence claim to the test.
I think my plan's pretty straightforward. It's this: we need checks and balances in government. It's something we were taught when we were in grade school, that government's supposed to have check and balances. But right now in Illinois, we have one party that controls every single lever of government, all of them. And there's no checks and balances at all. And when you have that, you get out of control spending. You get what we're having right now in Illinois, which is $140 billion pension deficit. We're behind in that. We're $2 billion in the hole from last year's budget, and we're about to do it again. And so I think that's the most difficult thing, is when you don't have those checks and balances, no one's there representing the taxpayers and putting their interests first over the government's interest, over the governor's interest, or even the legislature.
Absolutely. And then what do you think is the biggest challenge facing the office currently?
I think the biggest challenge right now is just how unaffordable Illinois is and how much money's being spent. When this administration came in, the budget was about $38 million the year before. It's now projected to be $56 billion. And that's a tremendous amount of money. And there's a lot of waste that's going on in the state. And in turn, taxes have risen dramatically for the people, to the point where it's being difficult to live. As a small business owner myself, my wife and I, and people I've talked to, it's getting very difficult to continue to make it here in Illinois, because instead of government making life easier or paving ways for businesses and people to do better, they're making it harder by taxing them in every way, from gas taxes to their real estate taxes going up on a regular basis, to the electric bills are doubling. It's just everything, and it's getting to the point where it's breaking a lot of people.
Mm-hmm. And on that note of affordability, with the state facing a tighter fiscal budget, are there any non-negotiables that you have as comptroller for payment priority?
Well, payment priority, that's a big thing. The comptroller does get to decide the priority and who gets paid first. In essence, we have to have our essentials, education, healthcare. The most vulnerable people we have, they have to be paid first. And then the people who are doing business with the state of Illinois for too long, they have to wait on their payments. They get pushed to the back of the line. And we can't have that, because we have to uphold our contracts and our obligations that we have. But we have to first and foremost take care of the people here in this state, our citizens, and make sure they're taken care of first.
Make sure to check out our full interviews with the comptroller candidates on our website, UI7Newsroom.com. And when we return, 2 political correspondents, 2 New York Times bestsellers. One question: is this Illinois politician ready for the White House? And then, from Champaign to Washington, from interviewing county board members to governors to congressmen, and I finally sign off for the last time. Stay with us.
When we work together, we achieve the extraordinary. Across the state, we're breaking down barriers and bringing people together. And we're developing solutions that ensure all communities benefit from the progress that innovation inspires. The University of Illinois system is leading the charge to co-create a brighter future for everyone. Let's achieve the extraordinary together.
If you want to know where American politics is headed, these two are the people to ask. Jonathan Allen is a senior national political reporter for NBC News, and Amy Parnas is the senior correspondent for The Hill. Together, they have nearly 50 years of combined political reporting experience over 6 presidencies. Their books have defined how to understand modern politics: HRC, Shattered, Lucky, and most recently, Fight, Inside the Wildest Battle for the White House. All New York Times bestsellers. And we brought them here to talk about one man, Governor JB Pritzker. Pritzker has been one of the loudest Democratic voices against the Trump administration. And in 2024, he was interviewed as a potential running mate for Kamala Harris. We asked Allen and Parnas, does Pritzker have a real shot? And is he intentionally leaving the door open? Here's what they said.
If so, do you think he has what it takes to be a competitive player here?
I mean, the double doors are wide open. I mean, I don't think he's closing the door to anything, and I think that he would quickly pivot after this gubernatorial election, talking about what he thinks is best for America and trying to use Illinois as an example of that and say that he's succeeded here and would want to go and run for president and export Illinois in some way to the rest of the country. This is a model that we saw not work for Ron DeSantis from Florida in 2024 when he ran in the Republican primary, but it has worked for other people. George W. Bush coming out of Texas in 2000 is a particularly good example. Bill Clinton in 1992 out of Arkansas. So for a long time you saw governors as really the top candidates for the presidency, and then Barack Obama shifted that up as a senator, and then Donald Trump shifted it again into a businessman with no political experience. But obviously, Governor Pritzker is leaving the door open. I think it's funny that he says that everything is what's best for the state of Illinois, because what would be best for the state of Illinois is if all the other states gave their money to Illinois, which I'm sure he would not campaign on if he was running for president.
Yeah, I think a lot of Democrats that I have spoken to are curious about a potential candidacy. I think a lot of people think that he's handled the situation and has been as combative as he can be with President Trump. And I think that he has a pretty good shot. I mean, I think it's a wide open race, and I think one governor is going to come forward and maybe there are going to be a number of governors, from Gavin Newsom to Andy Beshear, potentially. And so I think it's the governor's year for sure.
Well, it's no secret that I'm a senior, and this officially marks the end of the last time that I'll be anchoring at Richmond Studios. And if you would have told me a year ago that I'd be standing here as the lead anchor of an award-winning politics show, recapping interviews with politicians and award-winning authors, I'm not sure I would have believed you. It's been such a wild ride getting here, but it's one that I wouldn't change for the world. Thank you to Nathan, our executive producer, Ken and Colleen, our amazing advisors, and all of the super talented assistant producers and contributors for their work to make this inaugural season of this show so special. I couldn't be more humbled to be standing here today, being able to do what I love, and that's tell stories. I can't wait to keep reporting up in Green Bay in June, so make sure you tune in. And I'm even more thrilled to keep watching In Session and see what's next for UI7. Thank you, truly. And as always, thank you for joining us tonight. I'm Mary Piaceni here in Urbana, and you have a good night.